Welcome to the Ramayana, Stories of Dharm and Devotion. I'm Sandeep, your storyteller, guiding you through the eternal journey of Valmiki's Ramayana. Our narrative draws deeply from Valmiki's original text and is enriched with stories from other Indian traditions, offering you a complete and immersive experience of this eternal tale. In our previous episode, we stood at the edge of battle, where pride clashed with wisdom and truth walked boldly into the court of deceit. We saw how Raavan, desperate to shake Sita's resolve, conjured a cruel illusion, Ram's severed head and broken bow, crafted by the sorcerer Vidyujjuh to pierce the heart of faith itself. But Sita did not waver. Her soul, bound to Ram, saw through the trick, and faith rose where illusion failed. And then came Angad, son of Bali, Ram's final messenger. He walked alone into Raavan's court, fearless and upright. His words, sharper than steel, struck Raavan where weapons could not. And when Raavan bent to move his foot and failed, his crown fell, only to land at the feet of Ram on Suvela mountain. With that, the last thread of diplomacy was cut. Now, the time of warnings is over. The war begins. In today's episode, we hear the beating of war drums across the mountains. Conches blow, flags rise. The Vanar Sena forms ranks, led by Hanuman, Sugreev, Angad, and Jambavan, each aflame ready to burn through darkness. Ram, calm yet unyielding, orders the march. And within the gates of Lanka, Raavan arms his generals, his warriors thirsting for battle, his palace echoing with roars, not of courage, but of defiance. The earth will tremble. The skies will watch. The battlefield is ready. Join me now as the first cries of war rise into the heavens, and the eternal battle between dharm and adharm begins.
The dawn of war had come. The sky above Suvela mountain was heavy with stillness, the kind that arrives before thunder. The Vanar Sena, once a roaming force of wild energy, now stood in disciplined formation. War drums lay silent for the moment. Bows were being strung. Stones and spears were counted. Eyes were fixed on the golden towers of Lanka. At the summit of the mountain, Ram, Lakshman, Sugreev, Hanuman, Angad, Jambavan, and the senior Vanar commanders had gathered. The moment was solemn. Ram's eyes were calm, but sharp that was watching, reading, weighing. The time for words had nearly passed, but one last council was to be held. Ram spoke first, his voice steady. We have crossed the ocean. We have sent our message. It was received with pride, not peace. Now we must act. But our dharm is not only in action, it lies also in planning. Let us deliberate. Sugreev leaned forward, fire in his eyes. He said, let us strike before they expect it. Raavan's pride will make him overconfident. If we break one gate, the others will fall. Hanuman added with a quiet nod, true, but we must strike all gates at once. Split their focus, confuse their ranks, and let our fury fall like rain. Then Vibhishan, seated humbly beside Ram, raised his hand. He bowed his head and then spoke with quiet urgency. O Ram, permit me to speak. While we spoke here of strategy, I had already sent my most trusted counselors, Anil, Panas, Sampati, and Pramti, to spy upon Lanka. Ram nodded, giving his full attention. Vibhishan continued, assuming the forms of birds, they entered the city unnoticed. They flew over walls, listened from windows, perched upon towers, and returned with everything they saw. What I will now share with you is exactly as they reported. The circle of chiefs leaned in while Vibhishan continued. At the eastern gate stands the mighty Prahasta, strong and ruthless. At the southern gate, Raavan has posted Mahaparshva and Mahodra, both powerful and skilled in close combat. At the western gate is Indrajit, his son, armed not just with weapons, but with dark sorcery. He is surrounded by heavily armed Rakshasas bearing spears, harpoons, bows, and hammers. And at the northern gate, the king himself, Raavan, has stationed himself in person. He's surrounded by thousands of hand-picked demons, each one armed and eager for blood. A hush fell over the group. But Vibhishan wasn't done. He continued, "There is more. In the center of the fort, near the palace grounds, stands Virupaksh, commanding an elite force, armed with spears, clubs, bows. These are no ordinary warriors. They are loyal, fierce, and utterly devoted to Raavan." He paused, then added 10,000 elephants, 10,000 chariots, 20,000 horsemen, over 1 crore foot soldiers. Every demon of importance is backed by 10 lakhs of personal troops. These are not just soldiers, they are veterans of Raavan's past campaigns. When he marched against Kuber, 60 lakh warriors marched beside him. Demons equal to Raavan in strength, courage, and cruelty. The silence in the war council deepened. No one doubted the truth. No one questioned the scale. But no one blinked. After a moment, Ram spoke. His voice, calm but resolute, carried across the mountaintop like a command written into the wind. He said, "We do not fear numbers. We do not fear might. We walk with dharm, and that is our strength." He turned to his commanders and commanded, "Kneel, you shall lead the assault on the eastern gate. Hanuman, the southern gate is yours. Break their line like you broke their pride. Angad, take the western gate. Face Indrajit and hold the line. Sugreev, strike the northern gate. Face Raavan himself, but with caution." He looked around at his army, every Vanar now alert, listening, breathing heavy with anticipation. He declared, "I shall remain here on Suvela, with Lakshman and Vibhishan. From this height, we shall watch the field, direct the reserves, and be ready to strike where fate demands." Lakshman placed a hand on his sword. He said, "Let the heavens bear witness, for what begins now will be remembered beyond time." Hanuman bowed and said, "The time for patience has ended. Lanka shall see the fire she mocked." Kneel, Angad, and Sugreev all saluted, fierce and fearless. And as Ram raised his hand, a long conch echoed across the mountain. It was the sound of fate awakening. Below, the Vanar Sena rode. Stones were lifted. Trees were broken into clubs. War cries rolled like thunder across the plain. Lanka's gates stood tall, glittering. But now, they would be tested. As the battle formations were finalized and war cries rang across the mountain, Ram paused. He turned to Vibhishan and Sugreev, his gaze thoughtful, not as a commander looking down upon his army, but as a leader wishing to understand the road his warriors would walk. Ram said, "Before dawn brings war, I wish to climb to the very top of Suvela mountain to look upon Lanka with my own eyes. I want to see not only the gates and the walls, but the land our army must cross to the city that holds Sita." Sugreev looked at Ram with admiration. This was not a king who sat distant from danger. This was Ram, who stood where his soldiers stood, saw what they would face, and carried the same burden of battle. That night, under the canopy of stars, Ram, Lakshman, Vibhishan, Sugreev, and a contingent of Vanars ascended the final slopes of Suvela. The wind was cool, whispering through the stones. And as they reached the summit, the city of Lanka revealed itself below, spread like a golden jewel upon the dark sea. The Vanars gasped. They had never seen anything like it. Groves and gardens bloomed even in the night, glowing with moonlight. Palms and flowering trees, strange birds with dazzling feathers. The fragrance of sandalwood and lotus drifted upward. It was a city born of power, but crafted with beauty. Some of the Vanars, thrilled like children, ran down to the edge of the groves. They plucked flowers, chased butterflies, and for a moment forgot war. Others, drawn by curiosity, crept closer toward the city walls, staring in awe at the 7-storied mansions, their rooftops touching the clouds. And there, towering in the heart of the city, stood Raavan's palace, a 1,000-pillared marvel, carved in crystal and gold. Its shadow stretched across half the city. Its peak kissed the stars. From the top of Suvela, Ram stood silent, his eyes scanning every corner of Lanka. He saw the 4 gates, the patrols, the weapons gleaming in the torchlight. He said nothing, but every detail was being etched into his mind, not just as a king, but as a protector. Then, suddenly, Sugreev's eyes narrowed. At one of the city's gates, atop a high platform, a lone figure stood proudly, his chest bare, his crown shining in the moonlight. It was Raavan. The king of Lanka stood with arms folded, gazing out into the darkness, unaware that the eyes of Ram and his warriors were upon him. Sugreev growled softly. He thought, let me remind him what it means to stand at the edge of dharm. Before anyone could respond, Sugreev leapt a blur of golden fur and rage. He landed on the gate platform with thunder, right in front of Raavan. Raavan's eyes widened in surprise, but before he could move, Sugreev pounced. He snatched Raavan's throne, a seat carved from black stone and silver, and hurled it to the ground where it shattered like glass. Then came the duel. Fists collided like mountains. Elbows struck like lightning. Knees twisted. Backs bent. Arms locked. Sugreev and Raavan wrestled like titans. Neither gave way. They clashed, rolled, stood, and clashed again without fatigue, without pause. The air itself shook with their fury. From the mountain, the Vanars watched in awe. Even Ram, for a moment, was still. This was not just a battle of strength. It was a battle of pride, one for the past and one for the future. But slowly, Raavan began to tire. His breath grew louder. His strike slowed. Sugreev, sensing the shift, delivered a flurry of blows, then leapt backward and with a mighty roar sprang into the air, retreating to the mountain summit. He landed lightly, with barely a scratch. The Vanars erupted in cheers. Even Ram smiled faintly, pride glowing in his eyes. But then, his tone softened into gentle concern. He said, Sugreev, your courage is beyond question, but you are a king now, a leader. You carry more than your own strength, you carry the hopes of your people. Let this not happen again. In battle, let dharm guide not just your fists, but your judgment too. Sugreev bowed humbly. He said, I see your point, Ram, and I will be careful. Thank you for your guidance. The summit of Suvela stood quiet once more. But below, deep within the heart of Lanka, Raavan's pride had cracked. The duel was done, and the war was ready. At dawn, the mountain rumbled with movement. Ram stood tall, his eyes blazing like the morning sun, fixed on the city of Lanka, now surrounded by the storm of war. He turned to his warriors, Vanars of every size and might, with hearts full of loyalty and fists ready for battle. And then he spoke not just as a commander, but as the bearer of dharm, the guide of destiny. Ram roared, O warriors of the Vanar Sena, today is not just another day. This is the day when the world shall remember your names. You fight not for gold, not for power, but for dharm, for righteousness, for a cause larger than life. You are not mere monkeys. You are flame bearers of justice. Every tree you lift, every mountain you hurl, every roar that escapes your chest, let it speak of your devotion to truth. Lanka stands before us, not as a city, but as a fortress of adharm, illusion, and arrogance. Behind its golden gates lies a grief-stricken queen, stolen not just from me, but from the path of honor. Today, we restore that honor. Let no fear touch your heart. Let no doubt cloud your spirit. Your names shall echo beyond time. Fathers will teach their sons of the day when Vanars roared louder than thunder and fought for Ram, not as soldiers, but as heroes. So, rise. Strike with courage. Let your arms carry the strength of mountains, and your hearts the clarity of dharm. Let the enemy know the tide has turned. The Vanar Sena rode in unison. Tree trunks were hoisted like spears, rocks became shields, and the monkeys surrounded the golden city like a living ocean of strength. Even the vines could not enter Lanka. Every path, every gate was covered. Then came a clever trick from Angad. With keen foresight, The son of Bali let himself be captured, knowing full well what he was doing. The demons thought they had seized him. But before they could react, Angad leapt into the sky, dragging his captors like rags in the wind. Landing on Raavan's palace, a mansion as tall as a mountain, he trampled its roof until it shattered under his might. Before the stunned eyes of Raavan, Angad proclaimed his name and let out a thunderous roar. Then, with a triumphant smile, he soared back to Ram's side. Panic gripped the demons. Their strongest citadel had been breached by a single Vanar. Raavan stood, trembling with anger. He climbed atop his mansion, only to see what he had feared, millions of monkeys, flooding the land like a second rampart. Between walls and moats, monkeys stood packed shoulder to shoulder, roaring like storm clouds. "Woe! Alas!" cried the demons. Ravana's voice thundered across his army. "Sound the conches. Strike!" The drums of war rolled. Conches blew from both sides. The sea, the sky, the mountains, all echoed with the terrible sound of battle awakened. Ram raised his bow. His command was clear as he said, "Demolish their gates. Crush their pride. Let dharm rise through every strike." The Vanars charged. Mountain tops were hurled. Trees swung like thunderbolts. Teeth, nails, fists, every ounce of their being became a weapon of dharm. The demons met them head-on. Spears, swords, and black magic filled the air. The golden city shook. The great war had begun. 2 armies, 2 worlds, 1 battle. The gates of Lanka were no longer gates. They had become doorways to destiny. Extraordinary duels now lit up the battlefield, as Vanars and demons charged at one another like waves crashing against cliffs. Indrajit clashed with Angad. Sampati fought Prajang. Hanuman met Jambumali. Vibhishan crossed weapons with the demon Shatrughan. Gaza engaged Tapan. Neel challenged Nikumb. Sugreev met Praghas. Lakshman stood tall against Virupaksh. Ram himself was met by Agniketu, Rashmiketu, Mitrughan and Yajnakop. Nal duelled Pratapan. Sushena rode into combat against Vidyujjuh. Each name echoed across Lanka like thunder. Streams of blood flowed. Weapons shattered as the earth groaned. Praghas pierced Sugreev with arrows. But Sugreev, undeterred, struck him down with a mighty Saptparan tree, felling the demon like a storm-felled tree. Lakshman, arrows blazing like fire, overwhelmed Virupaksh. With one final shaft, he ended him. The 4 demons who dared face Ram, Agniketu, Rashmiketu, Mitrughan and Yajnakop, met the fury of the Ram's bow. With fire-tipped arrows, Ram severed their arms and silenced their arrogance. Manda, with a single blow of his fist, smashed Vajramushti and his chariot to the ground. Nikumb rained arrows on Neel and laughed. But Neel, fierce and brilliant, snatched the chariot wheel and hurled it, beheading Nikumb's charioteer in a flash of vengeance. Vidyumali's arrows cut through the air as he battled Sushen. But Sushen crushed his chariot with a massive rock. Vidyumali leapt down, make in hand. The 2 warriors charged at each other. The demon struck Sushen's chest with a thunderous blow. But Sushen, unmoved, hurled a massive rock that crushed Vidyumali's ribs. The demon crashed to the ground lifeless. The battlefield was terrifying. Spears, maces, chariots, corpses of monkeys and demons littered the earth. Jackals prowled. Headless trunks staggered in rage. Blood soaked the soil. The sound of cries, steel, and fury filled the skies like a second storm. The surviving demons, drenched in blood, longed for sunset. But as the sun dipped low, they gathered again. Their pride shattered, their fury burning anew. The war had only just begun. But the sun, too, had just dipped behind the horizon. A new terror now took its place, the night battle. In the growing darkness, both armies clashed again. Demon shouted the Vanars. Monkey snarled the demons. Each insult led to a strike. Each strike to a roar. Come closer. Strike harder. Where are you running? Chaos had no language, but its voice filled the battlefield. The golden armor of the demons glowed like embers in the dark. Their black forms looked like mountains crowned with flickering herbs. The monkeys responded with primal fury, ripping through horses, chariots, and elephants with bare hands and teeth. Ram and Lakshman stood like twin flames in the darkness, sending arrows sharper than lightning into demons, both visible and cloaked in illusion. The dust of hooves and wheels choked the air. Screams and steel shook the earth. Rivers of blood carved their way through the battlefield. Weapons glistened like deadly flowers offered by the earth to the heavens. It was a night of dissolution. The kind sages whisper about in hushed tones. But Ram stood firm. When the furious demon horde charged him, Ram unleashed 6 arrows, each one a flame. Yagnashatru, Mahaparshva, Mahodra, Vajradamshtra, Shuka, Sharna, all struck dot, all silenced. Ram's arrows cleared the skies like a fire burning away mist. Those who dared face him dissolved like moths in a flame. The night sky glowed, not with stars, but with shafts of golden arrows. And in the heart of this chaos, Angad rose again. With the strength of a mountain, he struck down Indrajit's chariot, horses, and even his skilled charioteer. The mighty son of Raavan vanished, escaping into shadows. But the damage was done. The celestials rejoiced. Even sages smiled. For Indrajit, who had terrorized the worlds, had tasted defeat. Praise echoed for Angad. But Indrajit's heart burned. Defeated, he vanished again into thin air. And from the darkness arrows came. Sharp, serpentine arrows, each one a curse. Each one invisible. Ram and Lakshman fought back. But these were no ordinary weapons. With illusion as his ally, Indrajit cast a net of pain over the sons of Dashrath. The Vanars watched in horror. Their lion-hearted leaders were falling, bound in a prison of magic, wounded, still standing. But the tide had shifted, and the night was far from over. The battlefield grew quiet, not with peace, but with dread. Ram and Lakshman stood surrounded by arrows, bound by magic that even the wind could not loosen. Blood dripped from their wounds. Their eyes, usually full of fire, dimmed. Indrajit had struck, not with honor, but with deceit, cloaking himself in illusion. From behind the veil of darkness, his voice echoed, "Even Indra could not face me." What power do you have, sons of Dashrath? You, who boast of dharm and virtue? Now feel the truth of night. Feel the sting of defeat. And with that, more arrows flew, sharp, hissing, deadly. They pierced Ram's chest, his arms, his thighs. His golden bow, bent in 3 places, slipped from his hand and shattered on the blood-soaked earth. Ram staggered. Lakshman cried out. But before he could move, he was struck. Indrajit's arrows knew where to hit vital points, joints, and sinews. The 2 warriors, pierced by hundreds of serpent-like arrows, collapsed. Ram fell first, face pale, body trembling like a tree caught in storm. Lakshman, seeing his brother fall, rushed, but too late. He too fell, shaking, groaning, bristling with pain. The Vanar Sena gasped. Hanuman's breath caught in his chest. Angad stood frozen. Jambavan turned his face away, unable to bear the sight. Even Vibhishan cried out in anguish. There was not a single part on Ram or Lakshman's body untouched by wounds. From their feet to their fingers, every inch bled. The ground turned red. The 2 brothers, warriors of light, lay side by side, like twin mountains struck by thunderbolts. Sushena, the healer, rushed forward. Jambavan gathered the guards. The Vanars surrounded the fallen heroes. Cries filled the night. The wine grew still. Even the demons paused in eerie silence, stunned by what they had just witnessed. From the shadows, Indrajit laughed. He said, "Let the forest wail. Let the sea mourn. The sons of Dashrath lie broken. Your war is lost. But though the bodies of Ram and Lakshman lay still, the hearts of their allies beat louder. Hanuman clenched his fists. Tears rolled down his face, but his spirit did not break. The Vanars did not retreat. They gathered, shoulder to shoulder, around their fallen leaders. The war was not over. Darkness had won the moment. But the light had not been extinguished. Not yet. The battlefield lay still. The two warriors, Ram and Lakshman, lay covered in arrows, their golden armor streaked with blood, their breath faint, their bodies unmoving. The Vanars, once roaring like thunderclouds, now stood frozen like stone. Sugreev arrived with Vibhishan. The king of monkeys stumbled to Ram's side, his chest heaving, his face pale. Vibhishan followed silently, his eyes already searching for the shadow behind this disaster. Above them, the vines carried a strange scent of magic. Vibhishan whispered, "Look there, he's still here." The Vanar generals gathered. They stood around the fallen brothers, their eyes filled with pain. These two sons of Dashrath had led them with light, and now lay on a bed of arrows, sighing like great serpents, powerless and pinned to the earth. Their limbs were soaked in blood, but their faces still held a glow, a golden radiance that refused to dim. One of them whispered, "They're still alive, but barely." The sky held its breath. Vibhishan's eyes narrowed. Through his own divine vision, he saw what others could not: Indrajit, still hovering nearby, invisible in form, drunk with pride. The prince of Lanka smirked at his victims, Ram and Lakshman lying helpless beneath his illusion-bound arrows. His voice rang out, though no one could see his face. He said, "The mighty sons of Dashrath, the slayers of Khair and Dushan, have fallen to my arrows. Let this be known across all the worlds. No god, no demon, no sage could save them from me today. The roots of our suffering, the reason for my father's sleepless nights, for Lanka's unrest. They lie here, defeated, dead. Their glory is now dust beneath my feet." His cruel laughter echoed as he shot another volley of arrows into the monkey ranks. He struck Jambavan on the chest and sent 10 blazing shafts toward Hanuman. Even Angad was not spared. Indrajit, veiled in shadow, roared with triumph. He roared, "Look at them. Look at the heroes of dharm, bound like cattle, broken like brittle branches." The demons cheered from the walls of Lanka. Trumpets of terror blared. They screamed, "Ram is dead." Indrajit, gloating, returned to Lanka, his illusions intact, his pride inflated. He entered Raavan's court, beaming. He proudly said, "Father, it is done. The sons of Dashrath are slain." Raavan rose in delight. Tears of triumph welled in his eyes. He embraced his son, smelled his head, and exclaimed, "You've lifted Lanka from despair, my son. Tell me, how did you do it?" Indrajit narrated every detail, how his magic arrows had entangled Ram and Lakshman like serpents, draining their strength, binding their breath. Raavan listened, joy blossoming in his chest like fire on dry grass. The shadow that had long followed him seemed to vanish for now. But outside the city, on the blood-soaked battlefield, Sugreev stood lost. He gazed at Ram's still body. Tears flowed unchecked. The king of monkeys trembled, overwhelmed by grief and helplessness. Vibhishan stepped forward, strong and steady. He said, "Hold, Sugreev. Hold your tears. This is battle, and in war, fate plays strange games. But Ram is not gone, nor is Lakshman. They are breathing, barely, but breathing." He took water in his hands, enchanted it with sacred mantras, and wiped Sugreev's eyes. He continued, "Listen to me, O king. You must not fall now. This army looks to you. Let us not despair spread like poison. The light of dharm has not faded. We must protect them till they rise again. For rise, they will." He lifted Sugreev by the shoulders and continued, "Look at Ram's face. See how his glow remains? The spark of life has not left him. Those who carry truth in their soul do not die so easily. So gather your strength. Inspire your warriors. Keep the faith alive. The Vanar army, shaken and whispering in fear, now turned to see Vibhishan moving through their ranks, rallying them, whispering courage into broken hearts. Vibhishan encouraged everyone as he said, "Stand tall. Let fear fall from you like a withered garland. This is not the end. This is the storm before the dawn." And so, Lanka celebrated. On the battlefield, faith flickered, but did not die. Ram and Lakshman, the sons of Kaushalya, lay low, but dharm still stood, and Hanuman's eyes still burned with fire.
In this episode, we witnessed a battlefield transform into a night of terror. The sun had set, but darkness did not come alone. It brought with it illusion, fear, and the cunning of Indrajit. We saw Indrajit, son of Raavan, strike not with honor, but with trickery, vanishing into the shadows, binding Ram and Lakshman in a net of enchanted arrows. The great warriors of Ayodhya, who had stood like twin mountains of dharm, now lay bloodied, pierced, unmoving. The Vanar Sena, once filled with thunder, fell silent, not from defeat, but from disbelief. And yet, even in this bleakest hour, the dharm did not retreat. We saw Vibhishan, cast out by blood yet bound by truth, stand tall when others trembled. With steady hands and sharper wisdom, he wiped away Sugreev's tears and reminded him, and us, that faith is not tested in peace, but in the fire of despair. We saw fear grip the hearts of warriors, but not break them. And we saw Raavan, laughing in his palace, blind to the truth, deaf to the echo of his own ruin. Victory, he believed, had been seized. But in this celebration, he failed to see what we saw, that the light in Ram had not faded, only flickered. This was not the fall of Ram. It was the rise of resolve. Because the dharm may stumble, it may even bleed, but it never dies. Join me in the next episode as the wounded heroes of Ayodhya lie silent and hope hangs by a thread. A new force enters the tale, one born not of muscle or magic, but of memory, healing, and ancient power. A whisper becomes a wind. A wind becomes a miracle. And what fell tonight may yet rise with the dawn. Share this podcast with your loved ones and let the timeless lessons of the Ramayana inspire your journey. Though the details of this ancient tale may vary across traditions, its essence reminds us of the enduring power of compassion, courage, and hope in the face of adversity. Until next time, may the light of dharm illuminate your path and fill your heart with peace.